As automation reshapes industries, agriculture is at a crossroads. Will AI and robotics replace farmers, or will technology and human ingenuity work together to revolutionise food production? In this future-focused session, we'll challenge the assumptions about the future of farming and explore how two global businesses are leading the charge toward a more sustainable, efficient and cost-effective industry. From cutting-edge innovations to workforce transformations, this conversation will push you to rethink what's possible. Are we ready for the future of food? Let's find out. So first up, we have a couple of sharp presentations from industry leaders to set the scene. Then we will launch into a robust panel discussion to tease this out further. First up, we have Andrew Kersley, who is the founder and CEO of Smart Machine, a pioneering leader in agricultural robotics. Smart Machine have developed the world's first fully autonomous, multitasking robotic tractor designed specifically for vineyards, first rolling out in New Zealand, then here in Australia, then in the US. And now they've turned their focus to citrus. As someone who used to be called the Orange Girl whilst managed the marketing for my family's citrus business back in WA, it tickles me pink, or rather orange, to welcome Andrew to the stage.
Welcome along, everybody. Thanks for being here. So I want to start by sharing with you my vision for the future of an operational field environment in permanent row crops. So imagine a vineyard, an orchard, or a nut plantation. Within that space, you've got fleets of machinery. They might be flying, they might be driving. They're doing all of the productive tasks, and they're doing them efficiently and safely and sustainably. They might be big, they might be small. They're definitely unmanned. They're precise, they're accurate. They've got access to a huge amount of information and data, whether it's from their sensors or from other things in the field and the crops, and they're able to use that information to make better decisions around inputs, what we do, why we do it, and when we do it. They're able to collect all this information about plant health, crop quality, yield estimation, and feed that into ecosystems that let us make better decisions around channels to market, logistics, when we harvest and why. Hopefully, increasing profits for growers, increasing profit margins so that they can continue to grow the crops that we all love and need now and into the future, and put them to us in the marketplace at prices that we can afford to pay for them. So this is the future we've been working on at Smart Machine for the last 6 years. Thank you very much for the intro. You've kind of covered it all. We launched in New Zealand in viticulture, spent some time nailing that value proposition, have transitioned that into Australia and now into the US. And now that we have these pathways, starting to explore the alternative crops that this technology can serve. So part of our business is we like to get down and dirty with growers. We like to get out in the field. We like to understand their operations, how they work, why they do, what makes them different from their neighbours. And part of that is understanding the pressures, the motivators, the reasons for change, and why we need to be looking at new technology, AI and robotics, to help address some of these challenges. So these things, they're pretty fundamental. I'm sure you've all heard of them before and talked about them before, and they're top of mind. So the first one's labour. It's huge. It's having a massive impact on all of agriculture. We see it a lot in our sector. It's been around for a long time. The availability, the cost, quality issues, it all really impacts how we grow now and how we're going to be able to grow in the future. The second one's the increase in input costs. So it's all the things: fertiliser, fuel, water, chemical, cost of machinery and implements. In my experiences, prices go up pretty frequently, and they very, very seldomly go down. Environmental challenges, and I think the social pressures that go with that are significant. We're starting to see seasonal change, unprecedented, and that really starts affecting, I think, what we do as people moving forward, and we've got a social conscience to try and be better. But that relies on all of us helping primary industry growers to change what they do and how they do it. This fourth one's really interesting, the regulatory costs. I saw a great article from Western Growers, I think, summarising a paper where in California those costs had increased like 1,300% over the last 18 years. And they impact all those other three areas, both on the grower and operational side, but I think also on the consumer side. And it's something that we need to figure out how to curb and what to do about that. So the reality is that all of these things combine to consistently increase the cost of production of crops. There's an easy answer, just put your prices up. But I think in a global, market-driven society, that doesn't always work. We still want to have some choice about what we buy and what we pay for it. And so hearing some pretty scary conversations out there, it's not so much about how we be better and how we be more efficient, but it's how we actually be. It's will we still be in business in 5 years, and how do we operate in this environment, producing everything that we love. So similar to what tractors and mechanisation have enabled over horse and carts years and years ago, we see a real opportunity now where AI and robotics can kind of deliver a new value proposition and a very different model for farmers to be utilising as we move forward into the future. So it's my privilege to share with you the Oxen. This is our flagship product. We've been working on this, as I said, for a number of years now. It's the world's most functionally advanced machine in the viticulture space. When we talk about functionality, it's really important. Often, automation and autonomy conjures up conversations about navigation, but in my opinion, it's much more than that. It's about the work that we're doing and how we're doing that, and having really good visibility on those tasks and the impact they're having on the crops and the environment that we're working in. They're able to do all the mechanised tasks that tractors can do. Again, it was something we recognised pretty early on, is that saving labour isn't enough. You generally need to change the capital scenario within these environments, and to do that, you need to be able to replace machinery that's being used at the moment. So it's a really high bar, but we can do everything now: mowing, mulching, trimming, leaf defoliating, herbicide spray, foliar spray, starting to do some work on cultivation tasks, participating at harvest. All these things are very doable right now. We utilise AI for aspects like navigation, safety, obstacle detection, and implement control. And this is sort of the pathways that allow us now to transition some of these other crops more quickly and more effectively without having to reprogram specific parameters for specific environments. We can do combinations of tasks that you can't do with traditional tractors, up to 4 activities at once. And this really lets us look at things like reducing the number of row passes in the environment, reducing the amount of machinery needed to complete all those operational tasks, less fuel usage, less impact on ground and on plant. We also collect a huge amount of information and data. We also partner with third parties who are doing that and looking at crop health, yield estimation, and we're now working on pathways to take those inputs and do something about it more specifically at more macro levels in field. So what does this mean for growers? It's a really exciting prospect. So autonomy lets us do things like reduce the amount of labour required to operationally manage these fleets, potentially up to 70%. We can reduce overall fleet sizes by 30%. And these two things in combination with some of those other benefits that we talked about, we're seeing the potential to increase the operational cost savings up to about 60% for these growers, which is truly significant. So, the exciting thing now is that, I truly believe AI and robotics is building out this pathway that allows growers to be different. I'm really excited to be a part of this future, and I hope you're all on board with that and are too. Thank you very much.
From viticulture and horticulture to myciculture. So I'm not talking about mice, but mushrooms. So for our next mini presentation, we have Michelle Lim from Forage Robotics, which is another ag tech leader revolutionising the industry in cutting-edge automation. We'll get that word, it's getting to the end of the day. Automation, I'll get that right by the end of the day, specialising in autonomous mushroom harvesting technology. When I spoke with Michelle a few weeks ago, she was actually in Central Ireland commissioning a new robotics setup, which had just been battered by a brutal by a brutal storm with 180 kilometre an hour winds, and thankfully came away unscathed. Interestingly though, when the staff couldn't actually get to site to work, the robots kept picking. I feel like that's such a delicious morsel of food to start off the conversation, and warmly welcome Michelle to the stage.
So good afternoon, everybody. It's a complete pleasure to be here. I'm Michelle Lim, and I'm the VP of Growth at Forage Robotics, where we build robots that pick mushrooms. So the mushroom industry is an absolutely fascinating industry. I personally don't think they get enough credit for just how big they are. On an annual basis, the mushroom industry sells about $60 billion in white button mushrooms to consumers around the world. And about 50% of this production cost for them is labor. And this labor is driven in 3 specific areas, which is the picking, the trimming, and the packing of mushrooms. And so what you're seeing back here in this video is a really great example of what most farms look like around the world. You have 2 to 4 racks in a room that can be 20 to 40 meters long. There's about 6 shelves on those racks, and they're all made out of aluminum. And then you tack on a manual picking trolley, you put a ladder on, you have people climbing up and down, reaching into these beds, and it is a job that is extremely taxing on your arms. It's taxing on your back, it's very physically demanding, and it takes about 3 months to upskill your new harvester to just be an average harvester. And by the end of that year, you probably won't be seeing them on your farm, so you have to rinse and repeat that. And so the mushroom industry is quite consolidated today. If you get the top 1, 2, 3, or 4 farms within a country, you own most of that market. And then as well on top of that, they are owned by private equity firms today, as well as pension funds. So at any given time, you have about 200 to 2,000 manual individuals harvesting the mushrooms on farm, for which we are a complete labor replacement. So what you're seeing are robots operating on the Canadian farm. Basically, the way it works is that we put a ground rail and a top rail connected to the racks. We slide our robots on, and then they just start picking. So I could probably talk to you about a lot of interesting things about our robots, but the 2 that I really want to focus on is how our robots help change the game for farmers to achieve the yield they want and surpass it, as well as achieve the quality they want and surpass it. The first of which is the most clear-cut. It's the AI capabilities of our robot. We're able to create smarter models that are continuously learning, that are modeled after the top harvesters on the farm. But the second one is extremely interesting, and it's a lot more process-oriented. So today, farmers tend to have 2 shifts. They tend to be about 8 hours each, and there is a gap in the time that they're able to pick. Our robots are able to change that process to be a 24-hour optionality. And what does that mean? That means that farmers are able to now start taking advantage of the fact that mushrooms grow at 4% every single hour, instead of competing against the clock to try to get these mushrooms off the bed. So let me give you an example. For example, if I have someone that is on shift, and the shift is going to end around 3 p.m., and no one's going to come back for another 6 hours, but my mushrooms are growing, and they're going to be the ideal yield around 3 p.m., what the humans are going to start doing is that they're going to start overpicking the beds, because what can happen is that the gills will open up on the mushrooms if they wait for the next shift to come on. And once the gills are open, once it starts growing and pushing up against each other and deforming, what you end up getting is what is waste product, and that's extremely costly for mushroom farms. And with our robots, what you can do instead is open up the beds a bit during that time, wait another 4 hours, and then pick at the exact perfect time. And so both those things allow us to use the inputs to the farm a lot more efficiently. The government of Canada had hired a third-party carbon auditor to see what that looked like. And on an average basis for the mid-sized farm, we save about 8.4 million kilograms of carbon emissions on an annual basis. So you couple that with the fact that we are a complete labor replacement solution, so you have labor savings there. And then you also add the fact that we're also able to increase yield and quality depending on how you use the robots. And you get something that is very useful for mushroom farmers. And so currently we have 6 customers. We're live on 3 continents, including Australia. What you're seeing right now is representative today of $8.4 million in robot sales. And when we talk to these farms about the future, what you get is about $1.3 billion in robot sales that they need to outfit their farms, of which they're extremely interested in because there's a 2 to 3 year payback period, as well as the fact that this comes out to being about 4,000 robots. And that's just for 6 farms in the world. Needless to say, we're extremely excited to be here in Australia, especially as Canadians who don't like winter as much as everyone seems to think we do. So we are here today excited to think about how we expand in a way that is respectful of the Australian environment. And if you want to speak more about robots that are picking mushrooms, we have a standout in Startup Alley and would be happy to chat. Thank you for your time.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you very much, Michelle. I'm going to pop that one down there. Fantastic. So we've had two exceptional scene-setting presentations which have provided a buffet of ideas for us to pick through as we imagine and reimagine the future of what the future of agriculture will look like in an age of automation. So to join myself and Michelle back on stage for our panel discussion, please welcome back Andrew. And joining them will be two other panellists, David Nation, Managing Director of Dairy Australia, and Simon Pearson, Professor of Agri-Food Technology and Head of School at the University of Lincoln in the UK. Fantastic. Come on down. Beautiful. So we have just over, we've got 23 minutes. I'm going to squeeze the juice. I don't know if there's mushroom juice, squeeze the juice out of every minute before we head into afternoon tea. So I'm going to kind of set the scene with a bit of a broad question around, having seen two examples of AI and robotics transforming the ag industry, I guess I'm interested to look at where we've seen in other industries the impact of AI and robotics in other industries, and perhaps some of the things that we could be addressing lessons that we can learn from other industries. David, do you want to give it a crack?
Yeah, happy to, and thanks everyone. I'm really interested in how there's a big contrast between sectors, but there's also a massive appetite in all parts of agriculture, like great to learn about mushrooms and viticulture, but what I see is this great appetite to take technology on where you can see it working and make a difference. And from a dairy perspective, it's now really mature to have robotic dairies where robots are milking the cows. And that's 20, 30-year-old technology now for some operations. But what we see in our situation is dairy is such a high-touch industry, milking the cows twice or more frequently a day, all the work around the farm. People get really busy in the business, and what robotics and AI allows people to do is lift themselves up from being in the business to being on the business. And we haven't necessarily seen a lot less labour, we've just seen different labour, and people actually enjoying farming more, and kids wanting to get back on farm where they never wanted to get back on farm. So we see robotics and AI having all these social benefits as well as economic benefits. You can just see it playing out across agriculture.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. It's not necessarily labour saving. There it is labour saving, but it's different way that we're attributing labour.
And attracts people
and
to
attracts,
agriculture in a completely different way.
Yep.
It's brilliant to see two fantastic companies actually getting robots on farms. That's fantastic, because robotics has been promising for the last 5 years or so, or 10 years. And you've got two great examples of equipment on farms. That's brilliant. These are breakthrough moments. Your question, though, it's quite a difficult one to answer, because AI and robotics are slightly different things, but they are interconnected. The issue is nobody really knows what the future is going to look like with all these technologies. So I'll give you an example. So we did a study quite recently where we looked at the role of large language models and how that's going to transform agriculture. And we benchmarked every job role in agriculture and how they're going to be replaced by LLMs. And what we figured out was about 20% of all job roles in agriculture won't exist because of LLMs. 25% will be highly disrupted, and 55% won't be disrupted. But of those 55%, because LLMs do cognitive skills, the 55% actually are skills which are very dexterous. So robotics is going to change those 55%. So in theory, there's hardly a job role in the physical world of agriculture that will not be changed by these technologies. And that's the level of the change and the transformation that we are facing. Now the issue is nobody can actually imagine what that future is going to look like, because it's so complex. But we've got to stick with it, because it's undeniable this is going to happen.
Andrew, Michelle, any reflections from you?
Yeah, I think just on that, one of the things that sort of enabled this is the rapid growth in the technology. And a lot of that's been driven by where this, the fundamental pieces of core technology that we rely on for AI and robotics, things like machine vision, how we see the world, the data processing, be able to run these massive models. A lot of that's coming out of things like autonomous cars, mainstream industry, industrial robotics. And so, I think, for it to work in this environment, we really needed that. 10 years ago, it wasn't possible to do what we're doing now, simply because of the cost and availability and the knowledge base around lots of the tech that we need to be able to deliver it. So it's kind of that hand-in-hand piece.
Yeah. To echo what everyone's saying, I do agree with what everyone has said. So to add on to that, I'm really interested to see how we start building farms, things that are more greenfield expansion, because everything is built with the constraint of the human. At least it is in mushroom farms specifically. Excuse me. And what you now have is you could have racks that are taller than 6 shelves. You could have racks that are longer than 40 meters. You could choose to set up the farm in a way that now thinks about efficiency and automation, that thinks about the humans that you need that have a different skill set to be able to run something like that. And it's kind of like the age of dreaming again. Not that that's ever ended, but it's just changed completely with what we have with robotics and artificial intelligence.
So it's almost like we're changing the game. Like we're no longer, we may no longer be constrained by the human limits, so to speak,
Yes.
of the technology. So your point about the 6 feet and whatnot. And I know, like on our citrus farm, we try and keep fruit under that limit, so we don't have to use additional equipment. So it's interesting point. So in that, and a question for the whole panel, I might start from the end and come this way. How do we prepare for this disruption, and whether it's your point about the distinction between AI and robotics, what is it that we can do as an industry to prepare for this disruption?
I think there's a massive upskilling piece that's got to go on here, and it's upskills and infrastructure. So infrastructure is going to change. You're dead right. Farms are going to be completely different. You don't need all of the walkways and all that sort of stuff. But then you've got to think about the people on the farms. So I used to run a farm with 900 seasonal migrant workers picking flowers, 900 people. My management system were basically regimental sergeant majors who were managing people. Well, those people are still very important in the business, but we've got to upskill them, because you won't have the people, but you've got to have the skills to then operate machines. You've got to have engineers, you've got to have data savvy people. So the skill base has got to change very, very dramatically to help these systems roll out.
David?
The two things I'd like to add over and above Simon's, one is it's only as good as the data it uses. And one of our big challenges in the dairy industry is data systems not talking to each other. And so, it's great you've got a robot in viticulture that does all these functions and you control it all, but if you've got a dairy farm that has a separate system robotically milking the cows, another collar on it that's different, another sensor on it that's different, another sensor in the paddock that's different, and they don't talk to each other, makes it really hard to really drive the progress with robotics and AI, especially if you've got dirty data going into AI. And the second one is that we've all seen is that things move so quick. Even your example, Michelle, of moving from one version of robot to another. When do you jump in? When do you buy and when do you wait? Because the technology is moving so quickly. Shall I just wait a couple of years? And then that farmer's going to already try it out. I'm just going to sit and wait. And by that stage, another generation of machines going to come along. Or do I get in now and be really an early adopter?
I'm going to come back to that point around data. I've got 2 questions to follow up. Michelle?
So I think farm readiness is something that's going to be the challenge, because throwing robots at a farm that's just not ready is not going to fix the actual problems of the business. A robot is a tool, AI is a tool, and what's the best example? When a lot of companies put in enterprise resource planning systems or CRMs, everyone hates it. It doesn't work, and a lot of the times that ends up being because the processes of the business that is buying the tool is not ready. And being able to make sure that you're helping customers get ready as they're implementing this kind of technology is very important.
Andrew?
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I think it's the flexibility and adaptability to move and to do things differently that incremental change sometimes is hard, and often it takes a step change to actually get to where we need to be. But that also takes a mindset, and it takes a process, and it takes a business to be ready to make that move and I think the people within it need to be ready to be adapt. You know, it's really hard for us with kids now to give them advice on what they should be focusing on in terms of education stuff, because we just simply don't know what that looks like. And so being prepared, I think, to adapt and change.
So what does that readiness look like? It's kind of been mentioned a couple of times. Like, what does that, have a business ready, have a farm ready? What does that readiness look like?
I think it's having a plan in place. It's the risk management around that. It's understanding the processes that need to be implemented and the position you need to be in for it to work for you. And it's not just go buy this instead of a tractor, or put a robot on a shelf instead of having people. It's how do we prepare for that, and what do we need to put in place, and what are the steps for that to be useful and productive and to deliver a value proposition for us.
Yeah. We have a really great example in terms of working with the farm to make sure they're prepared for that kind of change. Because what is it? Mushrooms for harvesters, it is the job that has the highest turnover, and they tend to go to other farms, actually. So it's multiple fold. And so with how we brought the robots into the farms we're working with, we were really careful to message that it's not about getting rid of all the staff on the farm. A lot of the staff are actually going to be the operators of the robots. And what it is more is that in that turnover, they're going to hire less and less back. And so being able to make sure that the farm has that right mindset, that we need to think about the messaging, so you just don't lose your operations day to day from the humans, is something that is something to test while you're going through a sales cycle with someone. Because a strong partnership that is thoughtful in areas like that will be the most successful in the long term.
Yep, fantastic. You'd mentioned before around data and whatnot and the foundations, and I'm interested in that notion that some of the tech doesn't talk to each other. And as someone who's used a lot of green machines, they can be quite prescriptive, shall we say. And I'm interested what you see as some of the foundations that are really critical to ensure that we can set up for that scaling, so to speak.
Yeah, we definitely see things getting better. And we definitely see a whole lot of issues being talked about, like data privacy, data access, data sharing, who should get it, why they should get it. We do see still a lot of robotics and automation companies holding on to data and being really selfish about data. And the question is, who's the client? Who's the customer?
Yep.
And I don't think that's been sorted out yet, because you can have all the data standards you like, but if the company that invents it and builds it, sells it, is selfish about the data, they're going to be selfish about the data. And our challenge as a client base is to say, hang on, we're buying this only because we can match it with this, and if you can't match it, we don't want it. So.
Yep. Any other reflections?
No, I agree, and with AI now, it's very, very hard to actually protect your data. I mean, lots of bots just moving data around, you don't know it's moving around, so it's becoming really, really difficult. And then the problem is people misvalue it, I think, and so they tend to hold on to it. So they think they've got something very valuable. Actually, it's minimally valuable. It's much more valuable if they're collaborating and working together. So valuation, big issue, and protection, big issue. And I think as AI gets more powerful, it's going to be harder and harder.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting distinction, and Andrew, I might throw to you for this one, around the distinction between data and insights.
Exactly.
So, like, how can we move away from that data into more insights? What do you see that looking like?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. We saw a couple of years ago, everyone wanted all the data in the world. I think everybody starts appreciating there's a real cost to that. And if you can't do anything with it, then what's the point? And it's that actual insights. It's like, how do we take that information and turn it into something that adds to the value proposition or gives us an outcome that means we can do something differently moving forward into the future. And a big part of that, I think, to sort of tie this together, is the ecosystem that you can put together of products, of information. And, you know, I think it comes down to us as technologists to be open about that, and to be, at the end of the day, our customers are our customers. They need to be doing the best they can. And if that requires me to work with you, and that's what delivers the best result, then I think we all need to be prepared to do that and figure out how that works economically as well. But yeah, it's very much what's the thing at the end of the day that shows up on a bottom line that makes a difference and is different now to what it was yesterday, and is moving us in the right direction. That I think is the important piece.
David, I recall you sharing a story about there was data points, but then there was something that was around the mastitis, picking up the. I'm interested from a dairy perspective. Yeah.
One of the classic stories for me with working with biology is there's all these inventions that find mastitis earlier. But they forget that a cow being a cow has its own immune system, and half the mastitis infections you pick up early, a cow will self-cure. So if you go too early, all the alarms go off, but they go off for all the wrong reasons. You go too late, it's affecting the cow. So what is the right time and place to do that in a biological system where there's more going on than just a sensor?
Yep.
And people get all caught up on the sensor and they don't think about what's happening with the biology.
Any other reflections around data from the, might jump to sustainability and the role that you see that either AI or robotics has in this, this movement around sustainability and what we measure, how we approach sustainability. Anyone want to jump in first?
Well, I think I think most robotic systems that we're dealing with, we're trying to look for systems that have got an economic gain and an environmental gain. I think there's an absolute recognition globally that you just can't keep battering the environment. So and robotics has got an absolutely key role. I think the best example is things like weeding robots. So using AI to identify weeds, and then you're killing the weeds with lasers or with hose instead of using herbicides. These are all good things, and I think what robotics and AI does, it opens this whole new paradigm in the way that we do agriculture. So the whole thing's now opened up again, and we can rethink it. And I think the big ag domination through pesticides, I think that's probably going to break down. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's being able to rethink about how we're doing things, revisit the design and the application, and make better decisions as we move forward about that.
Yeah. And with the precision that you can get, you should be able to be using resources efficiently.
Yep.
And that naturally contributes to sustainability.
Yeah.
The big one for me is it all gets really exciting, but at the end of the day, it has to be customer-centric. And you have to work with people where they're at, and you have to be on the journey with them, and they have to understand the why as much as you're trying to sell the why. I mean, look at the mushroom as an example. Are you doing it for labour? Are you doing it for better product quality? Are you doing it to, literally reshape your whole shed?
Yeah.
You've got to be really clear. The customer has to be clear why they're doing it too. And it has to be really honest. If there's not honesty and a real going at the pace with the customer, our experience it can go horribly wrong. Like robotic milkers, 1 in 5 of the early ones got pulled out. Terribly exciting technology. So if you don't go with the customer, it goes wrong.
Yep. I guess kind of wrapping up towards the end of the conversation, I'm interested to see where you see the future or what the avenues of where you see AI and robotics taking the ag industry in your respective sectors. Might start with dairy, then come to mushrooms, and come back to viticulture.
Yeah, our sense of it is we can't even see the end point. Like there's so much happening now. There's just a general sense that this is going to change and keep changing. There's so much technology that is just like the curve is just skywards. How that all comes together, how that all fits together. I think there's always going to be manual tasks, but there's going to be so much better opportunity to work on the business. Know exactly what's happening in the business. Know that you're doing the business right, and a genuine. As I was saying earlier, so many dairy businesses are family businesses, and it's going to really help the multi-generational aspect of dairy businesses. And that could be actually one of the most profound impacts of this technology.
Talk to us about that, the generational piece.
Well, just even now, just the number of conversations we already have in the industry saying my kids showed no interest in coming back on farm, and now they do.
Yep. So that opportunity workforce. Yep.
Yeah, I generally think we're right at the start of this revolution at the moment. I don't think it's fully appreciated the impact of AI already is having. And I think about things like plant breeding. There's an awful lot of AI now going into genetics, phenotyping. I think to the extent where I think phenotyping robotics is taking over from genotyping stuff because we can now got systems that can identify new varieties. That's already happening. We're seeing weeding robots going in around the world. It's happening. We're seeing crop harvesting robots, 4AG, but strawberry harvesting robots, broccoli harvesting. going in around the world. So we're right at the very tip of it. And as David said, we just can't imagine what that future is going to look like because it is so disruptive. But that's why it's exciting to be involved. You know, we're shaping the future, and for companies that we've got here today, you know, they're world leading, and we're starting to see what this vision will look like. And so, yeah, nothing will be the same.
Yeah. For mushroom farms, this is especially exciting. So when other areas in agriculture were mechanizing, I think he said when we replaced the horse with the tractor. The mushroom industry went from caves to wooden racks to metal shelves, and that's pretty much where it is. Everything else that's being automated is more on an adjacent basis. And so for the first time, mushrooms are able to mechanize the entire farm. Think about what it looks like, not just to pick the mushrooms off the bed, bring them to the front. They can think about now bringing stuff to the cold room. They can think about different things they want to toggle in quality, different things they want to toggle in yield. So much like you guys are both saying, the sky's the limit. And it's a really exciting time for mushrooms.
Yeah, I think in all the crops we deal with, it's been a really interesting trajectory to see the way that we've tried to mechanise and get bigger and bigger to utilise labour. But what that means is we start addressing problems at block level or field level as opposed to plant level. And I think that's kind of the thing that we're starting to see, is this ability to pull it back and address really localised issues and pick them up early and do something about it. And yeah, super excited to see where that all goes. And I think also the crossover between all of these advancements or piecemeal advancements that we're seeing, and when that all starts to pull together and tie together, and you know, you've kind of got this overarching knowledge base and scaffolding that kind of ties it all together, I think's really exciting.
Yep. And so one thing I'm curious about is if there was a thing that you see that AI or robotics could really, like whether it's a wicked challenge within the ag industry or a thing that you're really excited about, the steps that we're making in addressing this issue, or something that you're grappling with, you're like, oh, where do you see, where would you like to see AI or robotics really kind of step in? Or if anyone's got to start off.
Well, we've been working on robots to pick strawberries for the last 5 or 6 years. We actually think it's harder than medical robotics.
Why so?
Because it's such a complex environment. So if you think about the robotic challenge, you've got to have machine vision to detect this thing. You've got this very complex three-dimensional space where you've got to pick this thing in. You've got to pick it without touching it so you don't bruise it. And then you've got to have an autonomous vehicle which then moves that stuff to a pack house, but not just one, dozens of them. So we think this is the ultimate challenge in robotics, and if we break that one, I think the rest will cascade out. So that's what we're after. We're not that far away, but it's I think from an academic point of view, what you've got to try and do is these moonshots, and you've got to try and reach the stars. And for us, reaching the stars is picking the strawberries economically at the same cost as a human. And if we reach the stars there, the rest becomes possible.
And is strawberries a particularly difficult one, horticultural crop, or it's just
because it's very difficult. It's very dynamic. You've got very complex, dense clusters of fruit. You've got ripe fruit. You've got immature fruit across very large open areas in GPS-denied environments. So it's a very, very complex problem. So that's to us is the ultimate challenge, and I'd compare it to medical robotics any day. I've never done any medical robotics, but it's a very, very difficult challenge.
Yeah, fantastic. And dairy industry?
We could go to lots of places in the dairy industry, but the place I think I'm fascinated by is the whole interaction between the soil and the plant, and then onto the animal, and understanding how that works, and understanding where AI can give us new knowledge, and really think about the use of nutrients, the growing of grass, the species you use, why you use them, and literally be much more climate resilient, because we are going to be climate resilient in high rainfall areas, and to really understand how to use nutrients better and grow more grass. That underpins the whole dairy industry.
Yeah, fantastic.
For me, it's the exact right time to pick a mushroom, taking into context the quality of the bed, the compost, the hay, the substrate that's in there, the amount of carbon dioxide that's in the room, the amount of moisture that's in the room, how heavy the cap was an hour ago, just putting everything all together and being able to make that decision instantaneously is the area that I guess I dream about. And I know the moment we make that happen, we will dream about more things.
Yep, more moonshots.
Yes.
Yep, fantastic. Andrew?
Yeah, for me, I think it's the changes in how we operationally manage the environments we're in. You know, we've sort of been channeled down these pathways that have led to where we are now, and I think robotics gives us this opportunity to start disrupting and start looking at different opportunities for addressing the same problems differently or changing what those problems are. And so, yeah, I think that's what excites me, is that there's all of a sudden all of these new ways of approaching the same old problem and doing it differently with different inputs and different resources. And so, yeah, it's incredible.
Yep, fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you very much to our panel. Round of applause. Fantastic. So we are now heading into afternoon tea, and we have one more big moment left for evokeAG 2025, and that is on the main stage. After afternoon tea, we will hear from Bren Smith, who's joining us all the way from North America to discuss how regenerative seaweed farming can feed the world, followed by our biggest, boldest session yet. You can't ask that, and I cannot wait for you to find out who's on the panel with Kathy and Bren. And so we'll have those questions that have been fielded over the last couple of days, those really curly ones. Thank you all very much for coming to Breakout 1, and we'll see you back in the main stage.